Hi, Chris Plumb, head coach and CEO of the Carmel Swim Club, and this is the Off the Deck podcast. Off the Deck champions Carmel Swim Club's mission, teaching excellence through swimming for life. To more fully meet that mission, we are constructing a new pool, the Carmel Swim Academy, to increase the scope and to reach our community-based programs, including swim lessons and master swimming, and improve the learning environment for all of our CSC swimmers. We know this will save lives. We are proud to be a part of this exciting project, breaking ground on May 5th. To learn more, visit www.carmelswimacademy.org. Now, let's get on with the show. Our guest today is Ian Murray. Ian served as associate head coach right here at the Carmel Swim Club, and he's been the head coach of Dynamo since August of 2017. As head coach, Ian oversees all aspects of Dynamo Swim Club, Dynamo Juniors, and Dynamo Masters. During his time at Carmel, Ian coached a junior world record holder, a USA national swimming champion, and multiple junior national champions. His swimmers have set multiple USA swimming national age group records. Coach Murray is the USA Swimming National Team Coach, served as head coach of the 2019 National Junior Team trip to Mel Zajac, and served on the coaching staff of the 2016 USA Swimming College Challenge. He has been head coach for both the USA Swimming National and Zone Select camps. But before we get to Ian, we're going to do my segment called I Don't Know If It's Right, I Just Know It Works. And today I want to talk to you about part of Jim Collins' book, Built to Last, and the genius of and versus the tyranny of or. So Jim says that great companies do not oppress themselves with the tyranny of or, the rational view that cannot easily accept paradox, that cannot live with two seemingly contradictory forces or ideas at the same time. Thinking, you can have change or stability. You can be conservative or bold. You can have low cost or high quality. Jim says that highly visionary companies embrace both extremes at the same time. And instead of choosing A or B, they figure out how to have both A and B. And I firmly believe that, and it's one of the core beliefs at the Carmel Swim Club. And I think if you want to be a great coach, you want to have a great program, you need to believe in multiple things at the same time. And I think for Carmel Swim Club, it's having a community club and a national presence. As a coach, you can have change and stability. You can have compassion and toughness. You can be a great technician and do great work, and a lot of work. You can have individual programming and a great team. And I think you need to open yourself up and your mind up and work with the power and genius of and. And F. Scott Fitzgerald said, the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. And my next guest, like I said, Ian Murray, he's certainly capable, and I know he believes in the power of and the genius of and, because we worked on these things together here. So please welcome Ian Murray. Ian, welcome. How are you?
Doing well, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you on. I think we've been on some podcasts together, but this is the first time I'm interviewing you. So I get to make you look good today. So excited to do that.
Well, you did interview me once before. It just happened to be 15 years ago. So
yeah. Well, we can start there. We were both kind of younger coaches, and we met at one of the Zone Select camps, and I interviewed you. And what were you thinking when you first came to Carmel and you interviewed?
Well, I think as I remember it, it was May of 2006, and we were at the camp together. And in all honesty, I think, I mentioned, hey, you're looking for a head age group coach. He's like, yeah, are you interested? And I was like, no. I think it was like a hard pass at the time. But the summer progressed, and we ran into each other at junior nationals, and we actually finally really sat down and talked about it. And I think Chris Webb was part of that conversation as well. And it was like 10 days later, I was living in Carmel, Indiana. So it was kind of a whirlwind, but to me, it was more just, sitting down and listening to, board members that interviewed me, Webb saying that as well. I think my experience in the community and seeing the community, I just saw, a lot of potential, and it was certainly the right, move for me professionally at the time. I was looking for a new challenge, but it was also, I think, the right move life-wise for me as well. So it's, probably one of the best decisions I've ever made, was leaving Lake Erie Silver Dolphins, which I love my time there, but, leaving them in Cleveland, Ohio, and moving to Carmel, Indiana, and spending, 11 years.
Yeah. So before we get into Carmel, let's talk about, growing up in Cleveland, blue collar town. And I know unfortunately, you're a Browns fan, but we'll let that pass for today. I kind of equate you to a coach who has, strong character values, believes in that, instilling that hard work, maybe to use this term, blue collar work ethic, into your athletes. Where do you think you learned that? And how do you today instill that into your athletes?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I do, probably associate with that blue collar work ethic. It's what I've always known. It's probably what most people in Northeast Ohio know. But my parents, I'm a first generation American. Like, my parents immigrated here from Scotland in the late 60s. My father was in the Royal Merchant Navy there and moved to the United States for a job at the American Shipbuilding Company, which is owned by George Steinbrenner. And he worked there for a while and eventually became, an engineer, and worked his whole, career in Northeast Ohio. The town I grew up in is, basically something right out of a Springsteen song. It's the factories and, true blue collar, work ethic. And unfortunately, most of those factories don't exist in the town I live in now. So, like, you've seen both sides of it, where like it's been thriving, and then how you struggle with it when it's not there anymore. But yeah, I think that's definitely part of who I am, and it shows in my coaching. But I think that's just, how I started out, and I've been maybe smart enough or lucky enough to be with people to show me the way, where I've added more tools to my coaching tool belt as I've went.
Yeah, and I know you have two young kids of your own, but what was it like for you? I know your dad coached you, and what was that experience like? And any thoughts on what it was like having your dad coach you?
It was challenging. We had our highs and lows, like I think any athlete and coach relationship is going to have. Ours was unique in that sometimes it didn't end at the pool. Sometimes they came home as well. But I think it just I was an okay swimmer, but I think where I swam, I tended to stand out. Like, I was a little bit better than the people I was training with, which often required me to have my own, such my own lane or things like that. Growing up at a small YMCA swimming, and I think that really forced me to be in tune with what I was doing, not like technically, physiologically, like what is this set all about? What's it trying to achieve? And maybe I was fortunate to have a pretty good understanding of what my needs were as an athlete at a pretty young age, and that helped me my whole career. And it certainly helps me now as a coach. Like, I didn't envision myself becoming a coach. Part of that was because of being coached by your father. Like, I think you just have some demons that you're like, nah, okay, I need to exercise those.
Yeah, I'm coaching my kids, so hopefully I'm not doing that.
But I think once I did finally stumble into the profession, or get the opportunity to stumble into it, like, I fell in love right away. And I think those times of being alone in that relationship building that you had to work with your coach, whether it was a parent or not, like, it continues to be a crucial piece of who I am and what I try to do with my athletes.
Yeah. And then you went on to swim at Cleveland State. And so you stayed home. So in your thinking, what was that like to stay home and making that college choice? And, having what kept you coming back to Cleveland?
I mean, I think you try to weigh all the things that are going on in your life as a high school senior when you're making that collegiate choice. And Cleveland State was the right choice at the time. Met some amazing people and teammates, people I'm really close with until this day, and met my wife there. Um, and like staying in Cleveland wasn't hard for me. Like I'm, like I love Northeast Ohio. It's home. It's always going to be home for me. Um, and that I know some athletes, like I need to get away. I need to get away as from home as much as possible, or get away as far as I can. And that just wasn't me. I would have been fine going away, but that was just the best opportunity for me at the time. And like again, it had its highs and its lows. I think as anyone's going to have in their collegiate career. But like my highs were pretty high, and I think that revolves around the relationships that I built again with my teammates and my coaches and the other people that I had the opportunity to interact with while I was there.
Yeah, yeah. So then, kind of you and I meet in May of 2006, and then I only know that because you said it. So, and then I somehow convinced you to come to Carmel. And when you first started out, I think there's going to be maybe coaches out there listening in on this. What were you thinking when you first started here, and then B, maybe what would you tell yourself to that person that first came to Carmel today? Like, what advice would you give them now?
Really good question. I think what I thought was, coaching at Lake Erie for 6 years with Jerry Holtree was just an absolute privilege. Jerry didn't pay very well, but what he made up for without the pay was that he gave you opportunity, and he gave you responsibilities that most young coaches probably shouldn't have. Like I got to lead a team at nationals at 23 years old.
Right.
You talk about like being thrown into the fire and trying to figure things out. I mean, I've been there as an athlete, but being on deck and coaching is something completely different, especially when you're barely older than the people that you're leading on that deck. So I think being with Jerry, like there was a very specific way he wanted things done, and I was given some leeway, but I wanted a chance to grow and be my own coach, and learn with other people and begin to execute some of the things that I believed in that maybe weren't 100% in line with the philosophy that was going on at Lake Erie Silver Dolphins. So Carmel was that opportunity. And I think one of the things that stood out to me, and I think, I know Webb says that this is what sold the, the gig for me, was that not only was I going to lead the top age groupers, but like I insisted on being on deck with the top senior athletes, because I thought it was my responsibility to know, like, if I'm preparing kids for this level, I need to see it firsthand. And I want to know exactly what the expectations are at the level above me, so that I can craft what I'm trying to do for the athletes that are in my care, as well as the athletes below me that, I'm helping those coaches get to where they need to be. As what would I tell myself? I mean, we worked really hard, and not that I ever tell someone to like not work hard, but like I would probably say those first 4 or 5 years of Carmel, I didn't take a whole lot of time for myself. And, I think, all of the success aside, I think I probably would have been more successful or better for myself that I, been willing to unplug every once in a while and, take some time to reflect and visit other people and learn from other people. I didn't start doing that, or we didn't really start doing it until later. So I think that's probably one of the things I would say. I think, I went in there. This is the other piece I would say. I went in with a pretty steadfast belief on high school swimming.
Right.
And, if you're not familiar with Carmel, like the high school team is just, it's part of the culture. The club team is probably what is the animal and what drives everything, but the high school team is a major part of it. And it took me a while to realize that it was really important for the athletes and really important to the athletes. And I was ignoring that as a coach. And I think that's probably some good advice too, is that, look, when you're working with athletes, it doesn't matter what level they're at, what part of the country they're in or whatever. It's important to recognize what is important to them. What are they excited about? What really gets them going? And it may not be 100% in line with exactly what you're trying to achieve, but like, it's important that you're going to have to incorporate it into your plan. You can't ignore it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great advice. And probably, I don't know if you would well, I don't know how to put this exactly, but you'd have a hard time telling yourself that. I don't know if you would have believed it when you first started here, right? Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, you kind of transformed yourself. Obviously, you worked hard. You came to the office. I think you're one of the most organized people I've ever met, and I think that leads to your success. So, but you started in as a head age group coach and worked your way up to be an associate head coach. For the people out there listening, like, how did you transform yourself maybe from that head age group coach role to, leader of going on world junior trips and national junior teams and all those things? Like, what happened in those maybe 10 years to slowly get you where you are today?
Well, I mean, I think the culture and the expectations of the program, standards of the program, evolved over time. You and I, came online basically at the same time at Carmel, and we were dealing with 0 individual qualifiers for junior nationals, and didn't have a trials qualifier in 2004, and probably going back to my previous point, like a very high school oriented team. Like, we're very focused from October through February, but outside of that, we're just going to dip our toes in the water and see how it feels, and then we'll decide on what we're really going to do. And we went in with the objective of raising the standards of first the coaches, and then how the coaches interacted with the athletes, and then the standards of the athletes and their execution, and then the standards of the parents and how they supported it. That took hold. And I think each group of athletes, and look, I was handed a very good group of athletes when I first arrived. Like, you coached them before I did, and those kids went on to be Big Ten champions and NCAA qualifiers, and are getting their PhD at Harvard now in chemistry. Like, they were great kids, and they began to pave the way for like, I'm a big believer in that leaders don't create followers; they create more and better leaders, and they kind of set the tone for, I think, the future generations coming through the program. And I saw that as an opportunity to continue to build that leadership with the young athletes, as well as the coaches. And then it got to a point where the expectations, even at what would have been challenge 1, so you're talking about your top 13, 14-year-old athletes in the program, maybe some 12-year-olds thrown in, but people qualifying for Olympic trials from that group. And so from a performance standpoint, like, you were beginning to equal what most clubs would have at their top senior level. And then I was also spending time on deck with the athletes that were, also at our senior level. So, like, working with the kids and transitioning, relationship wise, was actually pretty easy. Probably the hardest thing for me was letting go of my age group job, like, knowing that, like, hey, that's not my responsibility anymore, and I need to let people who are, taking over that role do their job and do it to the way they think is correct and not the way that I would have done it. Those are things that I wish I would have learned, quicker than I did. But I think, as you adapt with the athletes and they move on to the senior role, like, I think we'll talk about the power of and. Like, I think you can still coach top level, 15 to 18-year-olds like an introvert. Like, you can keep the fun and the progression and the excitement that you have as an age grouper, and you can, add on some types of training, whether it's power, spending more time in the weight room and things like that. And I think my time as head agent coach, but also spending time on deck with a high performance group allowed me to have a pretty good mindset on how I was going to do that before I ever stepped on deck.
Yeah. And when you kind of talk about it and review it, what advice do you have? You have and our board president at the time, Todd Adams, talked about leading from the second chair, right? And I thought you did a great job of leading from that place, and working with, I think we always collaborated well together. If I think about it, you, myself, and Chris Webb, and I would agree it was a special time for all of us. We were young, hungry, and learning from each other. For the people out there who maybe aren't the head coach or maybe not leading a group, what do you think they should be thinking about from their position?
Well, I think, one of the things I think we always talked about was don't confuse disagreement with dissent.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that everyone has a voice. And I always felt like a partner. I always felt like I had a voice. And in a lot of cases, I knew it was my job to be the person who would be devil's advocate or say, hey, what if we think about it from this angle instead, or whatever. But I also knew that, once my piece was said, it was going to be considered like every other piece of information that's out there. And, the head coach was going to make a decision on where the program was going. And it was my job, like everybody else's, to go out there and toe the company line and say, like, hey, this is where we're going. And I thought, our staff at that time did a really good job. And I'm sure you guys continue to do a really good job at that. And that's something I try very hard to do here at Dynamo, is that I want to be a collaborative leader. Like, I value everyone's input in the room. I expect everyone to not agree with me at all times. And I want to hear those thoughts, those concerns, those questions. But at the end of the day, once we've all said our piece, we're going to feel a little bit better about it. And we're going to understand where we're going as an organization. And we're going to go out there and we're going to say the same message at all times.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. And, hopefully everyone out there understands that, behind the closed doors, you need to have disagreements and talk those things out. But once you go out into the front on the stage, so to speak, you need to be aligned. Otherwise, bad things happen. So, so you left Carmel and then you go to Dynamo, big program, filling some big shoes there, high expectations, 2 sites. Walk us through. I mean, how have you continued to lead Dynamo to its excellence, and what are the challenges that you face today?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think first, taking over, my taking over at Dynamo was due to tragic circumstances.
Yeah.
My predecessor, Jason Turcotte, passed away suddenly. And Jason was actually an important part of my life. I swam for him in college for a little bit. He was a fellow Clevelander, worked for swim camps for him, and was someone who I think was a part of my coaching journey all the way along. At some parts intermittently, in some parts, he was highly involved, and probably actually the person who made me feel like I could be a good coach. He was the first person who really made me feel that way. So I think coming in and sitting in that chair and filling those shoes, because he was a very large figure here, still is today. He is just he was a god here, and I think the first thing was I really recognized I'm not here to be the next Jason. There's no way I'm replacing him. The very best that I can do is that I can look at all the great things that he has put in place, and where he's led this organization, and we look at what we do well, and we're going to try to enhance it. And we stayed with that probably for the first year or so. Like if I learned one thing in my time coaching, and you said it earlier, you can have stability and change at the same time. I was very fortunate to be surrounded by really good people who knew their jobs. So the stability piece was there, and I let them do their jobs, and it gave me time to evaluate and see, this is how everything works. This is how things flow. And it was probably pretty close to a year before we start trying to implement any significant change. And even then, I was turning the dial pretty slowly, just because, look, I mean, this is a well-oiled machine, and can things be done better? Yes, but ultimately, like in most cases, you just need to get out of the way and let people do what they're supposed to do. But as much as we tried to enhance the things that we were already doing well, like I think you do begin to identify, especially since I have a different lens than what Jason had or what anyone else at Dynamo had. There are things we could do better, and those are hard conversations at first, because I think a lot of people took it personally, like, oh, this is almost like an attack, like we weren't doing it good enough. It's like, no, like these things can be done better. And if Jason were sitting in this room right now, I'd tell him these things can be done better, and we're going to do them better. So I think we set out to start changing some things. And I would say that finally, like right when I felt like I was maybe getting a grip of it, we end up in a pandemic, and you're fighting for your life as a business. We are fortunate in some ways to own and operate our own facilities, which is great because we always have access to water and we can program it how we see it. But when a pandemic hits and revenue stops coming through the door, you get nervous, because it costs a lot of money to run a pool, and we run 2 of them. In fact, at each facility we have 3 different pools. So, I think it came full circle. So I think in some ways, like we're starting from scratch again, because we've used this time to really think about, okay, how can we do things better and differently, so that if we ever came across circumstances like this again, like we wouldn't be so nervous about what was going on. But it definitely takes a lot to lead an organization with multiple sites. We have 3 competitive sites and great staff members, but we don't see each other all the time. Our athletes don't train together all the time, and we take our team culture with a lot of pride, but it's a lot of work to try to keep it where it needs to be. And I will say that I'm incredibly proud of what our staff and athletes have done over the past 12 months to keep it there, because this past weekend was the first time as a senior group we've actually really been in a meet away from our own facility, and it was like we never left. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. So just kind of looking forward here, coming out of the pandemic, hopefully we're nearing the end here. What do you think the things that we're going to take away, what are we going to keep, right, from the pandemic, do you think, moving forward? What did we learn?
Well, I think as much as we bash Zoom and that type of communication, I think in a lot of ways, like I know we discovered ways that it can be extremely useful for communicating specific types of information with our membership. Being a multi-site program, we were often running what we would call town hall meetings, which would be information on college recruiting or long-term athletic development, volunteering, and things like that. Someone would have to be going to all the sites and running that meeting 3 different times.
Right.
And now with Zoom, like we've produced recordings, and we've been able to do those things online and prepare for it way in advance, and do it from the comfort of your home, and not have to worry about driving all over Atlanta. If you know anything about Atlanta traffic, like
I was going to say,
it's way better.
Right.
So I think like that's an important piece, and it's also offered us like unique ways for us to communicate with our athletes, not necessarily like weekly, but like in a lot of cases we use Zoom to record things and send that information out to our athletes, so they're armed with information before they ever show up at the pool for practice or meet or whatever. And the other thing I think is, I can't speak for you guys, but we still are not operating, at least our top senior groups are not operating at our full schedule for training. We're with 4 people per lane, maximum, in some cases 5. We're a big organization. We have a lot of moving pieces. It's hard to get people through the facility, like especially between 3 and 8 p.m. Or 3 and 9 p.m. So that's requiring us to continue to make sacrifices. So as a coach, I think you're really focused on what are the absolute need to do things in the weekly plan, and what are the nice to do things. And I need to make sure I'm taking care of these need to do things. And if I can slide in some nice to do every once in a while, that's awesome too. But, we've had to trim the fat, for lack of a better expression, and really focus on the main things that we need as as a team. And in a lot of ways, I don't think it's actually impacted our performance a whole lot. So it makes me think that we don't need to be doing all those things, or, I think as a coach, you just need to be prepared to be very organized and really prepared to squeeze the most out of that 90 minutes, 120 minutes, whatever that you have for practice, as opposed to, being so blessed and being able to take your time and, waste some of it.
Right. Keep the main thing, right?
That's right.
All right. So we're going to finish up with some sprints to finish off this practice, right? So always got to go fast at the end. All right.
All right.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So if you could do a social kick with anybody in history, swimmer and non-swimmer, who would you do a social kick with?
That's tough. I don't know. I'd probably have to say someone like Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan. Yeah. All right. Leads us to our next question. What song would you least like to pop up during practice?
Oh, God. Anything by Nickelback.
Nickelback.
Yeah. Just can't do it.
All right. So if you could have a band come on during practice, what band or album would you want played from beginning to end during practice?
I could probably listen to The Last Waltz by the band on repeat forever.
All right. Love it. Would you rather swim in the deep end or shallow end?
Deep.
Yeah. Okay.
Deep end.
If you could create your own perfect I am order, what would it be?
Fly back and free. Get rid of breaststroke.
Just all done.
No.
Yeah. Mine too. I've decided I put breaststroke first. That way I could get a big pull out.
Yeah. Okay. If it was 100 IM, I could do the dive with the pull out and fake a few cycles. But anything above that, there's not the breaststroke.
Yeah. Kickboard or no kickboard?
I grew up with a board. I love kicking with a board.
The board. Okay. Are you kicking or are you going to do pull?
I don't know. I would say 50-50. I like them both.
Oh, okay. Would you rather have to swim in a pool that is too cold or too warm?
Probably too cold.
Okay. Lane leader or going last?
Probably lane leader.
I was going to guess lane leader. For all of our swimmers out there, how many strokes per 25 are you allowed in a kick set?
0.
0. You heard it here, folks.
Okay, one, we can take one with the flip turn. That's fine.
One with the flip turn. Okay. 200 fly or 400 IM?
200 fly. That was my best event.
Yep. What's your favorite Gatorade color? Powerade or whatever.
Probably blue.
Blue.
That's what my son would say. So he'd be happy that I said blue. So.
Oh, okay. You're a blue guy, and you got a blue shirt on. So, Ian, anything you want to tell us about that's going on at Dynamo or in the world, or what's going on with you? Do you want to let the people know about?
No, I mean, with Dynamo's going great. We're busy. We're actually getting ready for. So we have a 50-meter pool that has had a temporary structure over it for a long time, and one of the things I'm probably most proud about during the pandemic is we were scheduled to replace that structure, and we went ahead and did it. The funds were secure for it, so we went ahead and did a major capital improvement over a 50-meter pool. And in the process, we're renaming it the Jason Turcotte Competition Pool at our aquatic center, which I think is pretty cool. And we've been swimming in it already, and we've had a few meets in it, but we're still not allowing spectators and things like that. But in May, we are going to finally have an open house to let the membership and alumni and all the people come through and see it. And as part of that, it's going to be kind of like a fun day for Dynamo. We're going to have food trucks. There's going to be a silent auction that we're using as a fundraiser for our Olympic trials athletes and things like that. So that's pretty cool. We're really looking forward to it. And then our futures level athletes are getting ready to go down with Carmel to Sarasota for a training trip and compete in the Game Swimming Invitational. That should be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to that as we get ready for a big summer and figure out how I'm going to spend a whole month in Omaha, Nebraska, basically.
Yeah, we'll be right there with you, buddy. All right. That's it for Off the Deck podcast. Thank you, Ian Murray, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.